Transcend TV.
This is Candice Romero, or the human juggernaut if you prefer. She stands 6 feet 1 inch tall and weighs 275 pounds. She possesses incredible strength and explosive power. A former strongwoman and current professional wrestler signed to Fusion Pro, where she is currently the women's champion. In this series, we go behind the core, and the creator explains what went into making her and the thought process involved. When I first got the idea to create Candice Romero, it was in mid to late 2008. At the time, I was in a role-playing federation, and I noticed a gap within the female side of CAWs. From what I remember, Awesome Kong had just started her run in TNA. But for Candice, I didn't want to go with the savageness that Kong had, which I think makes the character more human. Candice is heavily inspired by one of my favourite wrestlers, Big Van Vader. During the early to mid 90s, Vader was truly a force to be reckoned with. The only bigger female CAWs that I remember seeing at the time were ones that were purely comedy characters, and even those were not common. So I set about creating a monster. Initially, it was purely a size thing. I wanted to make the biggest female CAW and have her be a serious threat, or even better, the dominant force. After the early design, I had achieved my initial goal. She was the biggest female CAW around. This wasn't enough. She needed other facets. At this point, she didn't even have a name. I always liked the name Candice, and I remembered a cyclist during the Olympics with the last name Romero. So, she became Candice Romero. Candice wasn't intended to be a main character or have a particularly strong persona. Over time, she developed from simply being strong with a large appetite to having a former career, a family, and even pet. I felt this made her feel a little more real in that she wasn't one-dimensional and that she had many aspects you can use, particularly during roleplays. One of my existing characters would serve well as a rival for Candice, primarily in the world of professional wrestling. Lauren and Candice are polar opposites of each other, to which I think makes them a more interesting rivalry. I always felt the characters should have a flaw. Candice's big flaw is that she has difficulty reading and an unhealthy obsession with cookies, which can be used for comedic effect. Candice has remained big, loud, and a child at heart. Her size and moveset I feel allow her to fit nicely into either the face or heel role. I don't think the heel aspect needs explaining, however the face might. I remember Goldberg and Karma having fans cheer for their destruction, so I thought Candice can be cheered for it too. While she can be fun-loving, there are always points where she'll be serious, mostly due to her temper. Candice being slower than most due to her size allows for her to be frustrated when she couldn't catch her opponent. This can make for good storytelling during matches, which is shown greatly in my matches with Hidamari Bread. Most of Candice's persona comes out in her appearance and moveset instead of her words. I would describe Candice as more of an average performer on the microphone and does enough to allow her other attributes to get her over. She has a number of friends within the wrestling community who tolerate her great vices tremendously well. Christina Dixon is her best friend, who was originally made by my good friend Ed. Despite their massive in-ring feud, she is also good friends with Lauren Davino, and this probably adds to their in-ring chemistry. Candice has a character that is easy to bring out in matches and is quite fun for me to play as. In a little under 2 hours, I had the basic premise for Candice. Hard to imagine her like that now, but she initially had pushed back dreadlock hair. Her attire more resembled a singlet worn by Mark Henry than it did Vader, mainly black with orange designs. This was before I had established Candice as a person who likes wearing mostly blue. The mostly black singlet stuck for about 3 years until I thought about the original inspiration. In 2011, I decided to make her attire more Vader-like. I looked back at the WWF look Vader had and thought about how I could put a twist on it. In the end, it resembled a hybrid of Vader and her original black singlet. I took advantage of a glitch which made the attire possible, which unfortunately was removed from the next game. The attire I fell in love with was not working on WWE 12, so I decided to rework. Instead of going back to the black singlet, I started thinking about her former career as a strongwoman and how they might dress. I looked at the stuff you would typically see on the world's strongest man. Often they would wear double layered with a vest over a t-shirt. The base worked perfectly for Candice, and the looseness of the shirt allowed her to look pudgier too. After attempting several weightlifting logos, I decided to use real world logos, mainly the Gold's Gym and Metrex logos. I used designs on her arms under the vest to create the look of a tight shirt underneath. This look stayed with her because I think it sums pretty much everything about. To complete this look, I used a weightlifting belt and used a skirt that matched the colour of the vest. This was to make it look like a longer vest with the belt over it. This was a look common in the world's strongest man. I decided to remove her knee pads in order to make her seem a little stronger, and my only complaint is that ideally her legs would be bigger. Unfortunately, they are set at 100. Over the years I have tweaked her body morphing, trying to make it look more natural, and it wasn't until WWE 2K14 that I got as close as the game allowed to my vision. One of the requirements for her moveset was that with her mostly wrestling women half her size, most of her moves should be effortless. Looking through the move options, I found the perfect scoop slam, where they would toss them across the ring. After getting the simple stuff out of the way, it was essential for me to try and bring out her character. For example, the fallaway slam resembles an event from strongman competitions called the keg top. Another with her being Vader inspired, I watched some of his matches to try and see more of his style, and the little things I can add that many may not have thought too much about. I gave her a combo that was akin to the big man himself, and more importantly, it suits her really well along with the body splash. Then there are the more obvious parts. Yes, just like Vader, Candice can break out a moonsault when needed, although it is less frequent than he would, as she would probably only use it for pay-per-view matches. I also gave her a super Hurricane Rana for when she really needs to go that much further to beat someone, but that is a move she uses sparingly. I gave her a bear hug as a submission move, and Alex suggested I use the move more in matches, which I adapted, and it works really well. When they first added the torture rack, I immediately gave her this as a secondary finisher, as I always liked the move. Later, I upgraded this to the accordion rack, as it looked much more savage than the torture rack. I decided to give her a power bomb as her main finisher, as it is something a person her size can perform with devastating results. I chose the razor's edge for the move purely because I really like the animation and the length she holds the victim in the crucifix pose. Lately I've been experimenting with her using the spear as a finisher too, which works well, and I have a good story in mind for it. Candice's entrance hasn't seen much variation, and that is mostly because I never felt it needed to drastically change. I use mostly slower motions, usually Mark Henry, Kane and Vader. Sometimes I like to include a flexing animation. I've used Ezekiel Jackson's entrance parts before, although there was that one entrance that involved a little tongue and dance. In reality, her entrance would change to fit the situation. Brock's pacing on the stage could fit for someone who is angry but attempts to control it, so I could see her using that at some point. Many theme songs have been used for Candice, some fit better than others. When she was first created, I used Brick House 2003 by Rob Zombie. Later, I used Beethoven's Fifth, covered by the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Then, an instrumental of Get Up by 50 Cent. Tyrannosaurus, which was Tyler Rex's theme. Blood Sugar by Pendulum, and then Pyrotechnics by Cliff Lynn. I generally feel her theme should resemble boss music, which aside from Brick House, I think most of her themes have fit either an intro to a boss character or the boss battle itself, as I could see her being an end of level boss. All wrestlers need a rival, and despite initially being introduced as Muscle for Lauren Davino, after their breakup they have feuded several times. I like this rivalry because not only does it contain my two favourite cores, but because they are polar opposites of each other. Lauren is slim, athletic and very model-like, whereas Candice is slower, more powerful and built to last. Despite a fierce rivalry, they do maintain a certain degree of respect for each other. Lauren, because Candice takes a lot to beat, as for some opponents knocking her off her feet is an achievement. Candice respects Lauren as she is one of the few who will go the distance because she has great technical ability and her champion's heart. Their wrestling styles are also very much a clash of styles, Lauren being more cunning and technical, Candice being more methodical and liking to dictate a slower pace. Both of them always have their eyes set firmly on the Women's Championship, and as long as either of them are champion, then the other isn't far behind them. Naturally, their movesets differ. Lauren has more quick kicks, limb targeting, and overall more wrestling holds, Candice favouring big slams, suplexes, powerbombs, and uses her weight as an advantage with her body splashes. It often works as a David versus Goliath match, only unfortunately for Lauren, it is Goliath who more often wins this matchup, as she only has a handful of victories over Candice. Despite the one-sided statistics, Lauren more often than not pushes Candice to the edge and forces her to dig deep to finally finish off Lauren. Depending on her disposition, sometimes Candice will struggle with what she needs to do in order to beat Lauren. These two have been feuding over my top women's championship in my games for a great number of years now, and I suspect they will continue to do so. Originally, it was just meant to be the one character, but she was actually the catalyst for several other characters of mine. The Romero family being Candice, Cadence, Valentino Jr. and Nicola, all of whom have received calls. One character, Edmund Barth, was created to provide her with a stronger link to her past as a strongwoman, as he was a mentor and later became a father figure for her. Barth was also created as a character that would always remind her of her strengths and how to use them, so if she ever lost her way, he would refocus her. Candice has gone from being simply a core I made as being part of a cast to being my favourite. She's probably the one I feel most comfortable playing as, and I can see facing either gender and be a threat. In the future, I would like to expand on the character, as she has been the women's champion for 2 years in my home federation, Fusion Pro. I am thinking that she may need a bigger challenge sometime soon. I always have plenty of ideas for her story, and if I can ever bring Fusion Pro to life in the form of a show, I can hopefully show people what I see when I look at the character. I hope you have enjoyed this video and have gained an insight into Candice Romero. Please stay tuned for the next episode of Breaking CAWFabe.